So this is the button placket that I had in the middle of my shirt on the front side, and this was the line where my neckline was supposed to be. This is the bias strip. So the right side of the bias strip towards the right side of the shirt. I'm not sewing on the wrong side of the fabric. I'm sewing towards the right side of the shirt. So you'll start from here and you'll fold about 1/4 inch. Make sure that the right side of the bias strip is facing the right side of the fabric. I'm using a contrasting thread, but you have to use the same thread. The only technique with bias strip is that you don't want to stretch or pull any of these two fabric, not the shirt fabric and not the bias strip. If you'll do that, the neckline will not be as finished as it's supposed to be. So I'm just sewing it with a regular length straight stitch. I'm just matching the edges, but I'm not stretching it. If you're not sure that you're sewing at 1/4 inch or not, then you can draw a line at 1/4 inch and then you can sew. And you can draw it with a pencil too, because this will not be visible. When you get to the end, I'm just taking 1/4 inch more than the end, and then I'll fold it like so. This is what my neckline looks like so far. Now to finish this neckline, you have to make cuts all the way across, so that when you turn it, since it's sewed in a round shape, it will be very neat and nice. Okay, so to ensure that, first thing is that you don't want to stretch the bias strip or the actual shirt fabric. You want to go easy with both of these. The second step is that you must make cuts all the way across. Now when you are making cuts, you're actually doing it like so. Now these can be at about 1/2 inch gap from each other, and you are actually cutting both layers, the shirt fabric and the bias strip, when you're making cuts. And you have to make sure that you are not mistakenly cutting on the stitch line. If you mistakenly do that, make sure you stitch it back. To any joints or even the shoulder joint, then yes, you have to make cuts over there as well. Now once you have made cuts all the way across, these are the cuts, I've made it all the way across, then what you have to do is, this is the seam allowance on which you have made cuts. You'll take both layers, the shirt fabric and the bias strip, and you will fold both layers towards the bias strip. Okay, that's why I'm using a different color bias strip, but that's what you have to do it. You have to make sure that both the layers are towards the bias strip and not here towards the shirt. So this is basically what you're doing. And once you'll do this, once you'll fold it towards the bias strip, then you have to fold it one more time. Since you sewed at 1/4 inch, so it will look like this. Then what you have to do is, once you'll fold it like this, you have to sew it. To sew it, you have to stitch on this bias strip. So I will be sewing right at this edge over here, right here, all the way across. Regular length straight stitch all the way across. And again, when you'll be sewing, you don't want to stretch this strip. Another thing is, if you want this kind of finishing like it is right now, then before even attaching this strip to the shirt, the bias strip to the shirt, you would want to hem the other edge first at 1/4 inch. You'll fold it at 1/4 inch and you'll hem it with a regular straight stitch, regular length straight stitch, and then you'll attach it to the shirt. But if you want this thing not to be visible outside, like so, then you don't have to do that first. So this is my seam allowance, both layers towards the bias strip, both layers. And then I'll fold it one more time, like so. iron this and settle this thing first before sewing. So this is how it looks like once I have sewed this bias strip all the way across. Now I have to finish this edge inside. Now there are two techniques to do it. One thing is you can leave it like so. When you'll iron it, it will settle down very nicely. And if you want to leave this border, then the only difference is that you first have to hem this. Before attaching the bias strip to this fabric, you first have to hem this at 1/4 inch and then you'll sew it. The rest of the process is same, but what I'm going to do is I'll fold it like this. I don't want this thing to be visible outside. If you want to do that, then what will you do is you'll first cut off all this extra fabric right next to the seam that you have just sewed. You'll cut off all this. You're only cutting the white strip. You're not cutting the shirt fabric. So once you have cut that all the way across the extra fabric, then you'll fold it like so. Like this, all strip should go inside and you'll iron it. So I have ironed it, this strip inside towards the wrong side of the fabric all the way across. And this is how it looks like. Now, if you would have stretched the fabric or didn't make the cuts that I told you, then the finishing wouldn't have been this nice. So it's very important that you don't stretch the fabric at all. And other thing is that you have to make the cuts. This edge is unfinished. So it's up to you. You can either hand sew this all the way across with slip stitch, hand sew it all the way across, or you can just do a regular length straight stitch all the way across to sew this. It's completely up to you. So I am doing a regular length straight stitch. The wrong side is towards me, it's facing me. This is the bias strip and I'm sewing on this edge. I've sewed it all the way across and this is what my neckline looks like right now. This technique pretty much works with any kind of collar. You can remove shirt collar, mandarin collar, or even a round collar from this technique, from the same technique. And it is applicable on any kind of fabric. So it is very easy. Do try it yourself and let me know if this video has helped you. Thank you.